if you're in the hall, please open your Bibles. I'm going to be reading from 1 Corinthians chapter 3, our Bible reading for this morning. And Nathan's going to be coming in a couple of minutes to pick up the second half of his Cruciform humility series, which he began last week. If you weren't here for that, it is available online. We do encourage you to go back and watch that and pick up the thread of what Nathan will be finishing off today. 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 21. So this is written by the Apostle Paul to the believers in the city of Corinth. And he says, "So don't boast about following a particular human leader, for everything belongs to you, whether Paul or Apollos or Peter or the world or life and death or the present and the future. Everything belongs to you, and you belong to Christ, and Christ belongs to God. So look at Apollos and me as mere servants of Christ who have been in charge of explaining God's mysteries. Now, a person who is put in charge as a manager must be faithful. As for me, it matters very little how I might be evaluated by you or by any human authority. I don't even trust my own judgment on this point. My conscience is clear, but that doesn't prove I'm right. It is the Lord himself who will examine me and decide. So don't make judgments about anyone ahead of time before the Lord returns. For he will bring our darkest secrets to light and will reveal our private motives. Then God will give to each one whatever praise is due. Dear brothers and sisters, I've used Apollos and myself to illustrate what I've been saying. If you pay attention to what I've quoted from the scriptures, you won't be proud of one of your leaders at the expense of another. For what gives you the right to make such a judgment? What do you have that God hasn't given to you? And if everything you have is from God, why boast as though it were not a gift? Amen." Thank you, Nathan.
All right. No props this week. So we're doing part 2 of this Cruciform humility, calling it Self-Forgetfulness. And last week, as a recap, I was suggesting to you that we tend to define humility by looking at the fruit of it instead of looking at the attitudes of the tree behind it. And I had up here on stage a little bonsai that I'd been given as a birthday present and an apple. That was the image I had up here. We look at the fruit of humility, the external actions, and we tend to think that that is humility. And I'm suggesting to you that is the outworking of humility. But humility in itself is an internal reality. You understand the difference? And I was saying that we need to be able to keep those things in the right perspective because there are some dangers if we don't. And I said, number one danger, that's really ringy, isn't it, Al? I can switch to a handheld if we need to, if it gets better. I was saying superficiality, namely that we can give the appearance of being humble without having any of the heart change. If we think that the fruit is the tree, then what we're able to do is say, those things, I can accomplish that. I can do that in my own strength. I don't need the Holy Spirit or I don't need God to help me do that. I can preference. And I made a reference to letting someone else get the last Tim Tam at a morning tea. And Noah's still shaking his head. He says, "This is your growth space, Noah. Humility, mate, all right?" No, but I was saying that it's like a shiny apple. I'm sure you've all done this. You've bought a piece of fruit, it looks good. You take a bite into it, and you are bitterly disappointed. The apple is flavorless, and it's that fluffy one. You know it's been in cold storage for the last 9 months, and you regret purchasing it. That's the danger of superficiality, okay? The second one is that it increases our pride. And that might seem slightly counterintuitive, but it's not really, because if you start to receive acknowledgement for your humility, it feeds your ego. It boosts your pride. And you begin to chase the accolades because you're getting praised for the fruit without having the tree or the root system to support that. Does that make sense? And so you become puffed up and you become a slave to your ego because you have to do more to get more praise. So those are the dangers of it. Then I talked about this special word that Paul uses for pride in 1 Corinthians 4:6. And it's a word that means puffed up or inflated or overinflated and distended. It's this idea of like, and I made the joke about the King of Scotland, Idi Amin, doing a massive fart because he was so inflated with gas he thought someone had tried to assassinate him. He was so distressed and distraught, but it was really just gas. And that's the image that Paul is producing. And Tim Keller, who wrote this book called The Freedom of Self-Forgetfulness, it was based off a talk that he gave, and it's where I'm borrowing because it was very impactful on my own life. He puts forward that there are 4 things. He says there are 4 things that we can learn from this word, puffed up, for meaning pride. And number 1 is the ego is empty. It lacks any real substance, and it attempts to fill a God-sized hole, and it fails because it can't. He says it's painful because when everything is working in its God-ordained order, you don't notice your body. You don't think about how great a job your toes are doing today. You know, they talk about, is your little toes important for balance or something, but you have no idea until you lose it. You don't know how well you've got it until something goes wrong. When everything is working properly. And the ego is the same. If it was functioning in godly order, then you would barely notice it. But because of the pain it causes, we know there is something horrendously wrong with our egos, with our sense of self. The third thing is it's busy. It's busy boasting and comparing and drawing attention to itself. It's attempting to build a resume of its accomplishments by comparing itself with others. And I had a quote up from C.S. Lewis saying, "We take pride not in the things that we have, but we are proud of having more of that thing than the next person." Pride is about comparison. I have more than you. I have more than you. And the moment that someone comes into our orbit with more than us, we suddenly lose all interest and the thing becomes distasteful because it's no longer feeding our ego. It's no longer helping us to boost our resume. Someone else is better than us. As a young boy, this was my whole life with sports. I love sports. My brother has always been better, and he's younger, and that's very frustrating. And that came to a point where I just had to go, he is always going to be better. And I'm okay with that. I play basketball. I played yesterday, and I did not score a single point. And I have to be okay with that. I mean, I don't have to. I can be like, I want to do better. But my success, or lack thereof, on the basketball court doesn't need to impact who I am. And so Dan has always been better than me at basketball. And I've had to recognize it's not about being more than or having more than. Because if I had that attitude of I was proud in a thing, and then Dan comes along and he's got more of it, more sports talent than me, I throw it all away. Like I'm done, I'm out. I'll find something else to boost my ego. I'll find something else to fill my resume with. You understand? The last thing is it's fragile. An overinflated ego or an overinflated sense of self is in imminent danger of being deflated. And a deflated ego is one that is constantly seeking validation, asking for you, will you puff me up? So when I say, oh, I'm no good at that, are you going to race in there and go, don't be so hard on yourself, it's okay, you are good at that. And you start to inflate an individual. So someone who is fishing for compliments or who's intentionally downplaying their capacity or abilities is someone with a deflated ego seeking for you to puff it back up. When I was 18, I don't endorse this necessarily. When I was 18 and I was at the International House of Prayer, I was playing saxophone 6 hours a week, 3 2-hour sets, and I was playing guitar 6 hours a week, 3 2-hour sets. And when I played guitar, I sat in sort of the middle of the stage space, and when I played saxophone, I was over on the side. And there was a pathway that would go past there. And one day, a friend of mine walked past, and I had headphones on, and I was just singing away to the thing. And afterwards, they came up to me, and they said, "Hey, you sing really well." And I said, "I know." Which shocked them. Now, I don't endorse, that's an immature response, but I said, "I know, I can sing, thank you, yes." Like, I kept it I wasn't seeking their puffingness up of me, but they were complimenting me, and I just went, "I know." It's not a great response, but it sort of illustrates the point. A deflated ego is seeking that validation. And that's why the ego is fragile, because we've either overinflated ourselves or we have been deflated. We want to be people who are filled up, not puffed up. So in this passage from 1 Corinthians, Paul is like, "Hey, I want you to be free from your ego. I want you to walk in the difference that the gospel makes in your life." And he says, Keller highlights these three things from 1 Corinthians. He says we can learn these three things. Number one, the natural condition of the human ego. That was all of last week. If you want to know more about that, I unpack those four things in greater detail. Number two, we see the transformed sense of self. And number three, we see how to get that transformed sense of self. And so here we go. We're going to get 2 and 3 today. You ready? So in 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 3 and 4, Paul is showing the Corinthians how the gospel has transformed his sense of self. See, what he says here in verses 1 and 2, which I don't have on the screen, he reminds them, he says, "I'm a minister of the Lord, and I've been entrusted with a special task." But then he says something odd. He says, "I care very little if I am judged by you or by any human court." Now, the word here used for judged carries the same meaning as a verdict, the court situation. And Paul is saying to the Corinthians he doesn't care what they think about him. He doesn't care what anybody thinks about him. He's come to the place of disconnecting his identity, his sense of self, from what others think. Paul's sense of self-worth, his self-regard, his identity is not tied to evaluations of people. Now, it's all good and well for Paul to say things like that. He's Paul. He says all kinds of outlandish things. I pray in tongues more than the rest of you. I wish that I was accursed, as in I could go to hell so that all of Israel would be saved. Those are huge statements. So for Paul to be like, "Hey, I'm completely disconnected from what you think. I don't care what you think." You look at that and go, yeah, that might be in the same category as those outlandish statements. I don't know how we can get to that place. But we do. We can. We want to get to the place where people's evaluation is like water off a duck's back. It just slides away. It doesn't stick to us. Or you get if you've got children, you'll know this. Max Lucado wrote a book about Punchinello, stars and spots. It's the same idea. Punchinello is a wooden puppet who's clumsy and uncomfortable. And in that world, if you do good things, you get a gold star. If you do bad things, you put black dots on. And Punchinello has no gold stars. He's got all black dots. People's evaluation of him is black dots over and over and over again. I won't spoil it for you. You can go and read it. Find out what happens. So how do we move past that place of caring what others think? It's not even that. How do we move past that place of allowing the opinions of others to dictate our sense of worth? And the obvious answer is, and maybe you've said this to people, just don't care. It shouldn't be their standards that you live to. It should be your standards. I should only care about what I think my standards should be. Now, going back to what I said last week, for those who were here, I made comments about people with low self-esteem. And generally what we say to people with low self-esteem is, hey, you don't need to worry about them. You just do you. You live up to your standards. You be you, the best you can be. And that's partly true. But we say you're feeling bad because you're measuring yourself against them. And again, that might be true. But just saying that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to be free from caring about people's evaluations. Think about your own life for a moment. Have you ever given that advice to someone? Don't care what they think, just do it. Well, don't care what they think, don't compare yourself. Maybe you've said it to yourself, I'm not going to care. I'm not going to live to that standard. I'm not going to... How's that worked out for you? The answer for me is not well. It didn't particularly free me. And I think the worst part was the standards that I chose for myself, I still struggled to hit. Paul goes even harder at this issue. Not only does he not care about what others think of him, he even goes so far as to say that he doesn't even care what he thinks about himself. It's as if he's saying, I don't care what you think, and I don't care what I think. I have a very low opinion of your opinion of me, and I have a very low opinion of my own opinion of me. He says in verse 4, my conscience is clear, but that doesn't make him right. He's saying that he believes he's acting out his best. He's doing the best that he can with what he's got. My conscience is clear, but that's not the thing that makes me right. Just because I think I'm doing it right. Do you understand? This is like moral relativism. Just because I think I'm right doesn't make it so. And Paul's saying, my conscience is clear. I believe I'm doing the best with the information that I have. I've been entrusted to be a minister of the gospel, and I'm doing the best that I can. But you know what? It doesn't actually make me right. He has a low opinion of himself. That's not a self-esteem issue, to be clear. Having a low opinion of his own opinion of himself is not a self-esteem issue. Don't get confused. It's not like we have to all go around being mopey and crushed under this, like, who am I? I'm nothing. It's not what that's about. So to those who would say, set your own standards, I think Paul would say, it's a trap. I thought that was funny. I could hear his voice. Did anybody hear that guy's voice? It's a trap. It's a trap that Paul won't fall into. It's a trap that a life marked by cruciform humility won't fall into. You see, ignoring other people's standards and living to our own isn't the gospel answer. It's still a self-centered one. On the surface, it might look like a great solution, but it will always fail to deliver. You can't live up to your parents' standards, so you feel bad. You can't live up to the school standard, so you feel bad. You can't live up to the standard that you think a father should be like, or a wife, or a mum. The standards we set for ourselves, we still struggle with. You can't live up to it, and you find it crushing. So set my own standards. Yeah, let's do that. How's your New Year's resolutions going? Some of you are smirking. Those are standards we set for ourselves, and for the most part, we do good for a couple of weeks. Then we fail again. And we find our failure crushing and we give up. Setting our own standards isn't the right result, isn't the right outcome. So then it's like, you know what? Forget it. I won't do your standards. I'm just going to do my standards, and I'm going to make them really low so they're easy to hit. That's not a real solution either, because then you realize I'm someone with low standards. I'm one of those people. Now what? You feel terrible. I've got low standards. That's no good. There's a phrase, it's called the soft bigotry of low expectations. If you set yourself up with low expectations, you're creating your own kind of terrible ceiling. Standards, whether yours or someone else's, are a trap and not the answer. So Paul doesn't look to the Corinthian church or any other person for his identity. He doesn't look for the verdict to validate that he is someone, but neither does he seek or receive that validation from himself. He knows the trap of living up to standards, and now we're going to look at where Paul finds his sense of self, his sense of identity. Remember earlier when I said Paul is prone to making outlandish statements? Here's another one. 1 Timothy 1:15. Christ Jesus came into the world to save sinners, of whom I am, and your version might say chief, or I am the worst. The Greek word there is protos. All of those accurate translations. He's saying, I am the most, I am the highest, I am the first. And I feel like I sometimes read this verse wrong. He says, of whom I am the protos, I am the worst. I feel like I've read it as I was the worst. We think Paul is past it. Do you ever do that? Sometimes you unconsciously read a verse wrong, or you might read right in English and something goes wrong in your brain and it comes out slightly differently. This is one of those verses for me. I think I've always looked at it and thought, of whom I was the worst, thinking about Paul's persecution of the believers. But this has been some time since then, years, a couple of decades even, and Paul's still saying, of whom I am the chief of sinners, I am the worst, I am the protos. The Greek here is this phrase, ego eimi, and it carries with it a sense of now and continuing. So he's not saying of whom I was, he's saying this is who I am. I'm in need of God's grace every day. I am the worst of sinners. I need the grace of God. He's confidently volunteering that opinion. And it's not a reach for him to have Timothy then turn around and say, oh, but Paul, and write back to him, Paul, you're not the worst. You're a great guy. Look at all the churches you've planted. It's not an ego thing for him. He just understands that we all fall short of God's glorious standard. And when I talk with teenagers sometimes, they'll say things like, yeah, that sin is bad and that sin is less bad. And I say, no, there's a line. We're all under it. We've imagined the steps. We imagine that some sins are worse. But from God's perspective, there's a line, and we are all so far from it. It's not even worth comparing steps. That's the reality. And that's what Paul's saying. It's like, I'm the worst. It's only the grace of God. It's only the mercy of God that I'm here. It's something that we will struggle to do. We will struggle because we continue to judge ourselves. We find it difficult to actually live from that place of going, I am nothing, I have nothing to offer. Paul's saying he knows about his sin, but he doesn't connect it to himself or his identity. Paul can differentiate between his identity, his actions, and his sin. How many times have you made a poor choice? Okay, I didn't mean to pause that long, but that works. I saw some of you laugh at poor choices. How many times have you made a poor choice? And then you've spoken over yourself. I am an awful person. I hate myself for this. I can't believe, how stupid was I to do that? In that moment, you are allowing your sin, your poor choice, to destroy your identity. I hate myself for that. That's dangerous thinking. You're judging yourself by your actions, by your choices in a way that Paul doesn't, and he won't. If you aren't careful, you allow your sin to do extra damage to your relationship with God, because in those moments when we are feeling that, I'm so stupid, how could I possibly, I hate myself for that. Most of the people that I've spoken to, it's very rare to find someone who doesn't do this, but most people then take those feelings and project them onto God and assume that because this is how I feel about me, that's how he feels too. And so we go, God can't want me right now. I need to get myself cleaned up. I'm not going to go to the prayer room. I'm not going to read my Bible. I'm too unholy for that right now. When you say it out loud like that, it sounds really silly. But it is the thought pattern that we have. It's a thought pattern that I had for a long time, and I had to fight that personally again and again. It feels so counterintuitive in those moments to immediately turn around and walk straight back to God and go, well, here I am. You knew what you were getting. Let's go. Have you ever thought about that? God knew exactly what he was getting, and he still said, I'll have you. You're still worth the cross. And then we think maybe he made a mistake. In those moments, he made a mistake. I need to get better. No. So the flip side of this, being able to differentiate between your actions or poor choices, is that Paul also doesn't see accomplishment and congratulate himself. Paul doesn't let successes or failures connect with his identity. And I've said this to teens a lot in the past, because I work with teenagers, in case you're new here. Sorry, I do next generation stuff here at New Life, children and teenagers, and I'm involved heavily at the school in chapels and things as well. And I've said to them many, many times, your identity must be anchored in something that is unchanging. Because and I haven't used this language with it, but it's the same concept. If your identity is that I'm the sporty one, I'm really good, you know what? Some kid's going to transfer into the school and is going to be better than you. Then who are you? I'm the really good at maths one. Same thing. Someone else might just suddenly get it all one day and be like, oh, look at me, I'm brilliant. And you're now number 2, 3, or 4 down the list. I was a good student in year 8. And then as the workload went up across the years, my own effort did not rise accordingly. I was clever enough to do well enough, but did I reach my maximum? No, I did not. So I say to these teenagers, your identity has to be something that is in something that is unchanging. Otherwise, every wind, every shift will knock you and blow you about, and you will have no idea who you are, because everything that you've put your identity in has shifted the boundaries. Does that make sense? So Paul is living from a place that we are going to struggle to understand with, because his ego is filled up, not puffed up. I love that simple word picture of filled up, not puffed up. Paul is talking about cruciform humility, although it's unlike what we mostly think about when we think about humility. I want to suggest to you that Paul is looking at the tree, but our most common understanding of humility is the fruit alone. And Paul has reached a place in his life where his ego draws no more attention to itself than any other part of his body. Can you imagine the freedom that man lived in? I made the joke, when was the last time you walked down the street and thought, boy, my elbows are doing well today? There's someone in here who's having that revelation. You don't think about it until it goes wrong. Can you imagine having an ego that you don't think about? You're free to engage with people, to be genuinely interested in them, be willing to help, and it doesn't puff you up or it doesn't deflate you. I think that's amazing. I want that. I'm trying my best. Paul's reached that place. Success and failure for him are not connected to his sense of self. Coming back to C.S. Lewis and Mere Christianity, Lewis makes an astute observation about gospel humility or cruciform humility. He says that if we were to ever meet a truly humble individual, we would not walk away from them thinking they were incredibly humble. And they wouldn't be making a big deal of themselves. They wouldn't be telling us they're a nobody, or they wouldn't be telling us they're particularly humble, because someone who insists that they are a nobody is a self-obsessed individual. That's a deflated ego looking for some puffing up. C.S. Lewis says this: what we would instead remember from an encounter with a truly cruciform person is how much they were interested in me. They will not be thinking about humility. They will not be thinking about themselves at all. See, the essence of cruciform humility is not thinking more or thinking less, more or less of myself. It's about thinking of myself less. That's it. I love that idea. The mark of a truly humble person is that when you meet with them, when you speak with them, they're sincerely and genuinely interested in you. They're not looking for you to puff them up. They're not looking for validation. So cruciform humility means an ego that is not puffed up but filled up. This isn't an issue of high or low self-esteem. Paul doesn't play that game. He avoids the trap entirely. I don't care about your opinion. I don't care about my opinion. And someone living out cruciform humility is neither a self-hating nor a self-loving individual. They're a self-forgetting individual. You see that? Neither self-hating nor self-loving, self-forgetting. Self-forgetful in the same way that you have forgotten, or totally not even registered, the number of breaths that you've been taking since I started speaking. You're all still alive, so you've been doing it. Or the fact that you can see your nose, but your brain mostly filters it out. You know that? Now you're thinking about it, you can see it, can't you? But until I made the point, you didn't realize, you may not have been aware of it in that moment. In a self-forgetful person, the ego just works. The self just works, not drawing attention to itself. Here's a test. A self-forgetful person isn't particularly upset by criticism. It might sting a bit, but it's not devastating. It doesn't keep them up at night. The last time you received a criticism, did you go to bed fuming, thinking about it, mulling it over? A lot of people do. Why? A person who is devastated by criticism is putting too much value on what others think or on other people's opinions. Another angle for this is that an ego-driven person might not be impacted by the criticism because they simply refuse to acknowledge it. And that's not wise either. They won't look at it, and they dismiss it because fundamentally they think too highly of themselves. Your opinion is wrong, or it doesn't matter. They have decided that they are above you, and your opinion is irrelevant. So get two responses to criticism. One is devastation, and one is completely writing it off, just ignoring it. Neither of those are godly. One is pride, one is low self-esteem, and they're horrible nuisances to our own future. A self-forgetful person is the complete opposite. When someone whose ego is filled up, not puffed up, gets criticism, it's not devastating. They listen. They're able to look at it objectively. They're able to see it as an opportunity to grow and change. And the more we understand the gospel, the more we want to change anyway. The more we understand that we're called to be like Jesus, the more we want to change. And when someone says, hey, that is not behaving like Jesus, and you go, you're right. Look at that. I need to fix that. Thank you. Doesn't mean it won't sting. We're all going to struggle with our pride. It will still sting. But a self-forgetful person will get past that and look at it and go, you know what, I think they're right. I think I've got a change to make. Wouldn't you rather be someone who neither craves honor nor is afraid of it? Someone who doesn't long for recognition? You're not frightened by it either? The kind of person who's not stuck fantasizing about self-esteem home runs. Here's how I did really well today. Or if I do this tomorrow, that'll be really awesome. Or daydreaming about success, nor are you beating yourself up and tormenting yourself with regrets. Do you ever do that? Torment yourself with a regret? You replay a conversation over and over again, and you imagine, if I just said it that way, it might have gone better. And you replay it again. If I just said it like this, or maybe I should have. That's tormenting yourself. A self-forgetful person is able to rejoice and celebrate in the successes and the wins of others, even if it is at the expense of yourself. I don't mean when you're being made fun of or teased. I'm talking about like in a workplace scenario. If your partner in the workplace scenario is doing really well, a self-forgetful person is able to celebrate and rejoice in that. And maybe you're working on competing projects. Can you celebrate the success of that person? Or look at the Olympics or some sort of competitive sport type thing. Can the second place person celebrate the victory of the first place because the first place did really well? Basketball, again, is my thing. I'll keep coming back to it. My team came second last season. I'll be honest, I was pretty annoyed about it. They played well. I personally played rubbish. So I was able to go, they were good. I was still pretty filthy about it for a couple of hours. But can you get to that place of celebrating them? Celebrating that? Now you might say that such a person doesn't exist, but it is a possibility for you and me, and we can learn from Paul. Now, imagine what that would be like when you can start enjoying things, not about you. That's what cruciform humility is. Not thinking more of myself, going back to some comments from last week, as more modern cultures dealing with low self-esteem, but thinking of myself less. Not thinking less or more of myself, but thinking of myself less. So how did Paul get to this place? Now, you have to look carefully, but it is there. Okay? Firstly, he says this: I don't care what you think, I don't care what I think, only God can judge me. Makes this comment, the word for innocent there comes from the word justify. It's the same word Paul uses in Romans and Galatians. And what Paul is saying is his conscience is clear, but that doesn't justify him. It doesn't make him right. What Paul is looking for, and I referenced some celebrities last week, including Madonna, and if you know the quote, this will make sense, and if you didn't, now you really need to go back and watch last week so you know what I'm about to say. What Paul is looking for, and what Madonna and those other celebrities are looking for, is an ultimate verdict that we are important and valuable. Everyone is pursuing that validation, and it means that every single day we are on trial. And everything that we do is about trying to prove ourselves in a courtroom. Do you notice how Paul says to the Corinthians, I'm not going to be judged by you or by any human court? Seems a little bit out of place. He's writing to a church. He's not addressing a court. So it makes me wonder, was there some sort of court decision issued that Paul's like, nope, not going to be part of that? Or is he potentially speaking metaphorically? Perhaps he's showing us that the problem with self-esteem, whether high or low, is that every single day we are in a courtroom. We're on trial. And a courtroom has defense and it has prosecution. And everything that we do is going to feed the defense or the prosecution case. That's an exhausting reality. When you're having to evaluate, consciously or unconsciously, every choice that I'm making is either going to work for me on the defense or it's going to work against me on the prosecution. That's a balanced thing. That's an incredibly busy place to be in. Some days feel like wins and some days feel like losses. And Paul is telling us he's found the secret because the trial for him is over. He has found the final verdict. How so? Simple. It is simple. It's not necessarily easy. The Corinthians don't justify Paul. Paul doesn't justify Paul. It is the Lord who justifies him. It's his opinion, God's opinion alone that matters. Have you ever considered that the gospel of Jesus Christ is the only good news where the verdict is rendered before the performance? The atheist might get their self-image or their self-worth from being a good person. They're a good person. They hope eventually that a good verdict, should a verdict be rendered or we just go into non-existence, they're hoping for a good verdict that confirms that they are in fact a good person throughout their lives as well. Or you look at Buddhists and Muslims who find themselves in a similar situation. They get to the end of their lives and they're all hoping that they've done enough to tip the scales in their favour. Buddhists are looking to reincarnate up the ladder, and Muslims are hoping to get into their heaven. Neither of them have any assurance of what's going to happen past the point of death. It's an exhausting reality every day in a courtroom, every day on trial. But Paul is saying that in Christianity, the verdict leads to the performance, not the performance leading to the verdict. We're free of that. The moment we say yes to Jesus as Lord, the moment we believe, God says, this one is my beloved son, or this one is my beloved daughter in whom I am well pleased. It's a Romans 8:1 reality. Therefore, from that moment, there is now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. There's no more trial. See, in Christianity, the moment we believe, God imputes Christ's perfect performance to us as if it were our own. That means he places it on us, and when he looks at us, he sees Jesus' righteousness. And we get adopted into his family. The verdict is in. And now as a result of the verdict, my heart begins to change and it impacts my performance. It's the other way around. This is what James is talking about, faith and works. He's not saying there should be no works. What he's saying is when you realize the verdict has been rendered, it should result in a performance change. Because I am perfectly loved and accepted. And I do not have to do things to build my resume or make me look good. See, I cannot look any better in the eyes of the Father than I do right now. Than you do right now. I don't know what your morning was like, but I mean that. You cannot look any better. Because when he looks at you, when he looks at me, he sees the perfect performance of Jesus. And now I am free to do the things for the joy of doing them. I can freely help people. I can make mistakes. I can stuff it up. But not have that connected to my sense of self or identity. God speaks over us. This is who you are. All of life is filtered around this performance and verdict thing. Everybody is chasing the right performance to achieve the verdict, whether it's pleasing a workplace or a people or a deity of some kind. Everything is performance first, then verdict. And we get to walk in the freedom of knowing the verdict has been rendered. But for those who are chasing that verdict with their performance, people like Madonna and Lady Gaga and Jim Carrey, who I mentioned last week, they have reached heights that you and I will never get to. And they've got there and realized there is no verdict here. There's no outcome. There's nothing here to be won. I got to the top. I got to the end of it, and it's just empty. It's unsatisfying. That's what Jim Carrey said. I wish you could all reach your highest potential and fulfill all your dreams and realize that's not it. There's nothing there. Paul is out of the courtroom. He's out of the trial because Jesus Christ went on trial instead. Jesus went in our place to the courtroom. He went on trial for us. It's a kangaroo court, but the Bible tells us he didn't complain. Like a lamb before shearers, he was silent. Struck, beaten, put to death as our substitute. He faced the trial that was rightly ours so that we don't have to face it anymore. I simply need to ask God to accept me because of what the Lord Jesus has done. Then the only person whose opinion counts looks at me and he finds me more valuable than every treasure on earth. And if this is our reality, we find ourselves in that place, how can we be consumed in worry about being snubbed or ignored? The King of Kings calls you his child. You have the ear. We've talked about this when we talk about the prayer room, and we can walk into the highest place of authority with boldness. We can stroll's a bit casual, but we can come and approach God. And he goes, yes, I will make time for you right now. I've been waiting for this. And you can pray and know that he hears your voice. You can't get that with the Prime Minister of Australia. The Prime Minister of Australia has been trying to get a meeting with Donald Trump recently. He's having trouble doing that. Sometimes you try and phone someone, you can't get a hold of them. And yet you can stroll, you can walk boldly into the presence of God because he delights in you. He's called you his child. We want to find ourselves in the same place that Paul's in. We want to find ourselves free from having to think about ourselves. I don't care what you think. I don't care what I think. I only care what the Lord thinks. That requires us to train ourselves because it's not our natural inclination. I've told this story before, and if you've heard it, you'll get to hear it again. I had to train myself to live out this type of stuff. And as a young man, I would drive to church on a Sunday morning and I would be, because I know that this is an important and sacred responsibility to be a worship leader or to be on the worship team. And I'd be driving and my conscience, that's the one, would be replaying all the stuff I got wrong in that week. Remember when you said this and that? Remember when you were actually quite nasty to your brother? Remember when this, that? It's like, and I'd be driving to church going, I shouldn't be getting on stage. I shouldn't be leading worship. And then I learned a phrase. And suddenly those drives to church for 10 or 15 minutes turned into me praying the same 2 or 3 sentences over and over again. And it was this: here I am, God, your favorite one. Come and enjoy me. And it's so counter to everything in my flesh, to my ego going, you have failed in all of these ways, you shouldn't be there, you don't have a place, no, no, no. And I would say it. And some mornings it was like an emotional, it was so difficult to say it. Here I am, God, your favorite one. Come and enjoy me. Come and enjoy me. Come and delight in me. I know I've stuffed up and I don't deserve it. I don't deserve to be up here. But you know, deserving to be up here or not, dealing with my issues, not yours. Deserving to be up here or not, I've always not deserved it. So sometimes my ego makes me more aware of it than others. I don't deserve anything that I've received from God. So I would say, and this went on for months and years, and it is my go-to now. Whenever I'm feeling that sort of crushing weight of whatever stuff, I'm like, God, here I am. Your favorite one, come and enjoy me. Here I am, your favorite one, come and enjoy me. Come and enjoy me. You do delight in me. And I'm going to make a choice to fight my own ego, and I'm going to run straight to you right now because your opinion matters to me, and I want it to be the only opinion that matters, not my own right now. Because my own opinion of me right now is incredibly low. So I would say, I'm your son. I'm your child. You enjoy me. And I'd turn up on Sunday and I'd have that 10 or 15 minute drive. And I'd walk in. And God in his kindness would breathe on me as I led. He would encounter me. And he would encounter the people in the room with his kindness and his love, because it was never about me. I actually have to get myself out of the way. I've got to get to this self-forgetful place of going, I'm not even here. This is a God thing. John, you guys can come up. Romans 8:1, there is therefore now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. We want to be people who walk that out. And it's a daily thing. It's a daily thing to go, I want to be like you, Jesus. When I look at Jesus' life, I see examples. When I look at it through this lens, I see examples of the way that he didn't care what people thought. We see the obvious ones in his engagements with the Pharisees, but you see them in other spots as well. But he didn't care what anybody thought. Turned to his disciples, you should probably feed these 5,000 people. What? Yeah, it's all right, you sort it out. Or the woman who came and said, even the dogs get to eat the crumbs off the table. It's like, yeah, okay. But he turned her down at first. His highest priority, his highest thing, is God's opinion. So I want to offer this morning the opportunity for you to make a response. And if you would like to receive prayer this morning, whether it's the first time or the 100th, 500th time, you would come to the place of saying, what I need is to know God's opinion of me. What I need is that. I'm tired. I'm just done. I'm done with my busyness, my fragile ego. I'm done with chasing validation. And I'm even done with the idea that I have to chase or make God validate me. What I need this morning is a revelation of truth. I am who God says I am, and I want to live from that place. I am surrendering, I'm giving it up. The busyness, the sense that I have to do it, it's already done in you, Jesus. So I invite you to stand. And if you want to receive prayer this morning from someone and say, I want that. I want a renewed revelation of how God sees me. Would you come down, the executive leadership team and our overflow leaders will come and pray for you and pray with you.